Welcome to what I think is the penultimate video of my car in America, and that is the monitoring app that I have running on the tablet. I'm going to walk you through the history way back in the day when I wrote the first version of this, and then we'll go forward and show you the capabilities of what it can do. Please feed the YouTube algorithm by giving the video a like. If you want to see more like this, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos. If you want to chip in on my expenses, I now have Patreon and YouTube memberships. Back in 2009, when I built the very first version of the conversion, say that 10 times fast, it had lead acid batteries, and the kit I used from Electro Auto had no monitoring built into it at all, short of, sticking a voltmeter across the terminals. So of course I went hunting because I'm a data guy. I need the data so I can analyze it to see what's going on in my world. I came across this product called a pack tracker, and it seemed to be pretty popular at the time. It could monitor, I think, 8 batteries, and then you daisy chained extra units to the full size of the capacity of your pack. Now I had some in the front and some in the back, so I had to make kind of an extension cable. And then what it gave you was this little 2-line LCD display that you would mount somewhere in your dashboard. And well, that's not good enough for me because there's a lot of data that this thing would be spitting out the serial port. So right at this time is when the iPhone had just launched. In fact, the iPhone 3GS was the newest iPhone at the time, and Motorola had come out with its first Android phone called the Droid. And the Droid had an LCD screen, but you could slide the top up, and it had a physical keyboard underneath and a little thing with a thumb tracker for arrow keys, which was so cool. And at this point, I was undecided in the world of Apple and Android. Neither one was really taking off technically on the technical side in the market. People were swarming all over the iPhone as users. And here's a cartoon from XKCD, which explains the situation perfectly. The guy is asking the woman at the desk, well, what phone should I get, an iPhone or a Droid? And she's talking about, well, how good is it? Am I going to spend my life restlessly producing instead of sedately consuming? Is there an app for that? And she says, yeah, it's on both. Wait, no, looks like it was rejected from the iPhone store. Droid it is then. And that was my cue. Literally, this comic was why I chose to embrace Android in my life, and I've never looked back. The iPhone for developers is horrible. Don't even get me started. And going all the way back to 2009, even back then they had a reputation of just rejecting apps for either made up technical reasons or that would compete against something that Apple was trying to sell you. And so enough of that. So I went with the Droid. Now I had to get the data from the pack tracker out of the pack tracker and into the Droid. So I found this serial port to USB dongle thing, and I wrote code in an Android app to read that raw data stream through the Bluetooth port and drive all the gauges and numbers on the screen. So this is the first version of what I had. The first tab shows a map of where you are. It's tied in with the Google Maps system and your GPS. It would draw a line according to where you were driving on your trip, and it would constantly recalculate how much range was left in the battery pack. And frankly, it wasn't a lot. My lead acid battery thing, I think it got 40 miles on a absolutely full charge down to dead. So I'm a little better now. But the next tab was the gauges, which shows what is actually going on inside. and it would give me my percent of charge, my pack temperature, and the pack voltage. And across the bottom, it would show how much the instantaneous current draw was on the pack. The next tab was the battery tab, which showed the batteries in their physical layout, index from 1 to 20, and each of their current instantaneous voltage levels. As you can see, the values are all over the place. I think I was just displaying random data just to get the system to work. Next tab was for trips, and it showed me the date, how far I went, how much of the charge I used, and the estimated full range, which never calculated properly. So ignore that column. The next tab was errors, which came from the pack tracker, either too high voltage, too low voltage, or in this case, it's saying low water likely. I don't know how it actually came up with that information, but that's okay. The next tab is preferences, and that's where I set up everything that drives the rest of the app. The rated voltage, the low battery voltage, where I should sound an alarm, how I set up the batteries in each row, and how to talk with each of those little remote boxes. So that gives you an idea of what I had at the time. You can see the pack tracker hardware box is a little gray square. The master one is connected across the first battery, which is never a good idea. You do not want unbalanced draws on your battery pack. And this thing did the cardinal sin of powering itself from only the first battery. But the rest of them were daisy chained with cables, and you could see each individual voltage sensor was a tiny wire that went on to one of the battery lugs. Now inside the pack tracker, there is a Zilog Z8 microprocessor, actually a bit of a microcontroller in the F1680 series, at a whopping 20 megahertz. It's got 16 kilobytes of flash memory for programs and 2 kilobytes of RAM. So this is a teeny tiny, not very capable microcontroller. But if you want one, Mouser will sell it to you for nearly €5. So I would think the supplies of this chip are dwindling, and it wouldn't be recommended for new designs, that's for sure. But the cool thing is that the Z80 was the first chip I ever learned to write assembler code on, and then BASIC, and that was in my Radio Shack TRS-80 computer that I got when I was about 14. Fun times. The downside of the pack tracker system is after I bought my system, the guy declared the product was dead the next day. I was not a happy camper. I even offered to take over the product and pay him to buy him out so I could continue updating the software, upgrading the hardware over time. And he said, it wouldn't be worth my time to train you on everything you need to know. Well, thanks, dude. You just kind of knocked the legs out of everybody who's been using your product and may want to use it in the future. But anyway, this is where we are at this point in time. And then I put the car in storage and moved to Thailand. After about a year, I found a viable electric scooter and I updated the app for that. I 3D printed a mount for it and it slid right on, so it became my app. Again, it had the trip tracking feature, but it didn't have any real-time data flow because there was no way for me to get into that battery pack and extract anything worth value. And that brings us up to now, when I left Thailand, moved to Spain, and I've been putting all this work into the Tesla battery pack upgrade. So I bought, I think it's an 11-inch tablet that you see right here, and I 3D designed a mount for it so it will mount underneath the dashboard behind the shifter and pivot away if I need to park, and hopefully nobody will see it and steal it. And I updated the app with a slightly different gauges, and I was pulling the data from the EVTV controller over Wi-Fi instead of Bluetooth this time. But the data I pulled allowed me to get the value of every one of the little groups of cells in each battery module, with 3 in the front and 3 in the trunk. Each one has 6 battery clusters, and those represent their voltages individually. Then I upgraded everything a little bit more, and gives us the app that I'm running on today. Especially the status screen here is definitely customized for the Tesla system because it's got minimum, average, and maximum battery voltages, and I can set the limits, which will trigger alarms, and you can see the alarms across the top. It pulls the battery temperatures and also shows the status of the positive and negative contactors in the V2 box, both them being triggered on, and then the feedback loop in the contactor hardware that says, yes, I confirm that the contactor is turned on. So mostly the interesting thing here is pack voltage and pack current, and I'll show you a little demo of how that works. We're in second gear. The car is about a foot off the ground safely. Turn the key and engage the pedal. Okay, I can hear. Do you hear that? We're pulling 4 amps. 5, 6, 8, 9. Only 8 amps, and the motor is spinning quite nicely. So I'm thrilled. Okay. That wraps it up for a Friday. That's a really good way to end the day on a Friday. So that about wraps it up for the video. When I get the car running, I'll take you on a little test drive around the nice tree-lined, quiet, calm, well-behaved streets of Barcelona. Just before we wrap up, I want to thank my Patreons, Peter Bouvier and Puppy, for their support. We also just popped over 2,000 subscribers, which is quite a nice milestone for my little channel. All support is greatly appreciated. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, please give it a thumbs up. I see that 81% of the viewers aren't subscribed. Please do, as it does help the YouTube algorithm. Take care and see you next time.